Now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. The United States thanks the presidency for submitting this resolution consistent with the presidency's obligation under OP 11 of Resolution 2231. On August 28th, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, the E3, each notified the Council of Iran's significant and continuing non-performance of its nuclear commitments. Their case was clear. Iran has enriched uranium well above the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, limits in a manner for which there is no credible civilian purpose. As we speak, Iran continues to not implement the IAEA's JCPOA monitoring measures and to not provisionally apply the IAEA additional protocol. The E3 could have initiated the snapback process as early as 2019. Instead, they chose to first pursue intensive diplomacy with Iran. Then, in July, the E3 offered to extend the snapback mechanism if Iran were to take steps to address concerns regarding its highly enriched uranium stockpile, comply with its IAEA obligations, and resume direct diplomacy with the United States. Despite suggestions to the contrary from Iran and others, Tehran has not yet realized those conditions. The United States therefore voted no on this resolution, and we are pleased that this resolution was not adopted due to not receiving the requisite number of yes votes. The practical effect of this vote is that absent any further action by the Council, the pre-2015 UN sanctions on Iran are reimposed following the end of the 30-day snapback period on September 27th. However, to be absolutely clear, our vote on this resolution does not impede the possibility of real diplomacy, despite any statements to the contrary. The UN provisions to be reimposed are not arbitrary, but instead narrowly scoped to address the threat posed by Iran's nuclear, missile, and conventional arms programs and support for terrorism. Their return does not preclude later removal through diplomacy. More importantly, President Trump has continued to reiterate the United States' ongoing readiness for a meaningful, direct, and time-bound dialogue with Iran, be it prior to the conclusion of the snapback process on September 27th or after. Absent a deal, it is incumbent on the international community to not accept Iranian half measures or efforts to delay accountability. We must, with one voice, press leadership in Iran to choose the path of peace and, by extension, prosperity for the Iranian people. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. For the statement, I now give the floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
Mr. President, today we have already stated our principal position rejecting both the attempts by European states to trigger the snapback mechanism and the actions of the presidency in advancing them, including the submission of this draft resolution. Our position on this matter remains unchanged. The fact that the Russian Federation voted for the draft should not be interpreted as a change in our stance. We supported the draft for only one reason. Its sole operative paragraph concerned maintaining the UN sanctions waiver regime for Iran. This is the only politically and legally justified decision, reflecting the lack of alternatives that we have emphasized over all these years. The logic embedded in the JCPOA assumed the gradual lifting of all restrictions on Iran. And, in our firm conviction, there is no reason why these restrictions should not expire on October 18th of this year. the law, the letter and spirit of the JCPOA diplomatic law, and, finally, simple common sense all indicate that exerting pressure on a sovereign state through political blackmail and brute military force is unacceptable. We have all witnessed how Iran became the victim of aggressive actions by Israel and the United States in June of this year, and then attempting to further pressure it with UN sanctions is immoral, unfair, and illegal. Yet this is precisely what our Western colleagues are now trying to do. We would like to remind you that everything, including Iran's interaction with the IAEA, proceeded according to plan until the United States, in 2018, took a destructive path and officially withdrew from the deal. This triggered the crisis surrounding the JCPOA, the consequences of which the Council is now forced to deal with. Yet Western delegations consistently omit this fact. Despite Washington's unlawful and aggressive actions, Tehran showed restraint and for more than a year, let me emphasize, more than a year, continued to diligently fulfill its commitments. Only after another wave of pressure did Tehran take responsive measures, regularly noting that these actions were reversible. Unfortunately, our European colleagues were already then uninterested in returning to diplomacy and did not follow the path of normal dialogue. A chance that existed in 2022 when parameters for restoring the JCPOA were discussed. The violations by the United Kingdom, France, and Germany of their obligations under Resolution 2231 and the JCPOA have long become chronic. This includes their inability to fulfill their commitments to ensure Iran's economic benefits from the lifting of pre-2015 EU sanctions, as well as their unlawful decision to resume unilateral sanctions pressure after the JCPOA's transition day on October 18, 2023. Our country has repeatedly conveyed to Security Council members our position that the United Kingdom, France, and Germany have no right to invoke the procedure to restore the UN Security Council sanctions regime against Iran provided for in paragraph 11 of the operative part of Resolution 2231. A party that fails to fulfill its obligations under any treaty or agreement forfeits the right to invoke the instrument provided therein. This is unequivocally confirmed by the so-called clean hands doctrine, the principle of acta jur servanda, and advisory opinions of the International Court of Justice. Against this backdrop, the so-called Eurotrio notification of the snapback mechanism, circulated in the Council on August 28, has no legal or procedural force. It cannot serve as a basis for any decisions or actions of the Security Council. This position is detailed in the joint letter to foreign ministers of Russia, China, and Iran distributed in the Council on August 28. Let us emphasize again, from our point of view, no snapback procedure is actually being triggered. The submission of the draft considered today is a direct violation of Resolution 2231 and the JCPOA, which is an integral part of it. For this reason, the Russian Federation does not recognize any so-called subsequent steps taken in this context. We would like to remind everyone that there is a real alternative to the lawlessness taking place today in the Security Council chamber. This is the Russian-Chinese draft resolution currently in the pipeline, which proposes a technical solution requiring all original JCPOA participants to immediately resume negotiations in search of a diplomatic solution. We call on all rational members of the Security Council to support it when it is put to a vote.